Welcome to Rick Rack Ruby. I'm Laura Cluvo. Today we will be making this large angel ornament featuring the Pixie Noel fabric collection. She's fun and easy, so let's get started. For these next few designs, I'm returning to the Pixie Noel collection. It's just so darling, it's hard to resist. And for my first step, I'm just going to fussy cut these individual motifs the best I can. You know, sometimes when you cut out one, it prevents you from cutting out the next one because there's not enough room in between them. So I'm going to measure each individual image and then add an inch all the way around. That's 1/4 of an inch around for seam allowance and another 1/4 of an inch for a little border. I don't want to be too close to the image, so I'll add an inch and I'll fussy cut as many of these as I can, and then we'll figure out what to do with them. I fussy cut the images from my fat quarter, and I have 2 of these with the little girl. I have, I think, okay, 2 of these, 2 of these, 2 of these, 2 of these, 1 of these, 1 of these, and 4 of these. I've decided that this is going to be my first project because I have 4 of them, so if I mess up, I still have 3 more. And it's an odd and unusual size. The dimensions are odd for me, and so that makes it a little bit fun and challenging. And what I wanted to do is make something like the charm square angel, which is, 5-inch squares. But of course, if I just added, a similarly sized shape above it and pieced it, then it wouldn't be right because I don't want a seam in the center of my center square. So I know that was confusing, but you'll see in a second. So then I thought, well, maybe a stripe I could add to the top, but my stripe is diagonal and I don't really like that. So I'm going to piece these and create that herringbone shape. That, there we go. This shape right here. And I'm going to piece that above this to make the front of the angel's dress. So these are 5-inch squares. And I'm just going to carefully match up those stripes. And let me just make sure that I explain this. See, if I sew this to this, it's not going to give me the effect that I want. If I sew this to this, then I do have the herringbone. So one of the squares, you'll have to turn it just, is that 90 degrees? I think that's 90 degrees, right? So that they create this herringbone shape, the V shape. And I'm going to make a seam right here, but I'm going to pin it very carefully so that these stripes are matched up. And then I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'll be right back. There we go. It looks pretty good. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Even if every single V doesn't match up perfectly, it still gives the impression of the V's. Now I'm going to press my seam allowance open, and I'm going to stitch this. I'll center this and stitch it to the top of this and then trim the edges. Now I like the points to come down from the top, down to the center, but this way also works. So either way, I'm going to determine the center of this little patch right here, okay, and then set that right on the seam. And there we go. I'll stitch this, trim off the edges, and I'll be right back. I'm just truing this up. I know that this is 5.5 inches wide, so if I set this on my 2 3/4 inches-ish, then I should have this pretty well centered. Here is how it looks. I pressed the seam allowance up toward the striped fabric because if I open the seams, then I'm afraid I might see that little boundary there looking through the fabric where you could see a little edge. And since I'm adding lace at this step right here, I feel like it's just, I can easily avoid that. So I'm going to cut off a piece of this lace. Let's see, this is the right side. And I'm just going to top stitch it right here. I like just the little scallops kind of overlapping a little bit over the blue, like this. I'll be right back. Now for the sides, I've cut 2 pieces of this red print. This is like the snow globes, and they are 7 inches tall and 5.5 inches wide. I try to see if I can't get the majority of them right side up. Like I know this one will show, and this one might be caught up in the fold, so I'm more concerned with the bottom half. So maybe like that, and like that. Now I'll press these seams open and I'll true up this edge, and then I'm going to pink the bottom edge. Here we go. Now this lace is about 5/8, let's see. Yeah, 5/8 of an inch wide. And so I wanted something a little bigger for down here, maybe 1.25 inches. So I've chosen this one. This is about 1 1/8 inches, but it doesn't matter. You can use whatever you like. I'm going to just apply this to the bottom edge and top stitch it. I'm going to go right along the center of this row of flowers, right along the center. And, you know, by pinking the edge, I hope not to have a lot of fraying threads, but you could also hem this. You know, you can always just kind of fold it up and, you know, just do the same thing. Here's how it looks. Here's the front, and here's the back. The seams are pressed open, and then you can see I used a little zigzag to attach that lace. There you go. Sometimes when I use a straight stitch, I might sort of wander off the edge of the lace, and so I find a zigzag is just better for me. Now I'm going to just match up the edges here and seam up the back. And now I'll turn my dress right side out. And our dress is, well, it's not totally done, but the preparation on the dress is complete. Now for the face, I'm using a 30mm head bead. I've already created the face, and you can find the instructions for my face in the Focus on Faces video. Since this is a bigger bead, it has a bigger hole, and I'm going to use 3 strips of red tulle. Each one, I mean, this is probably 8 inches long, so I'm going to go with probably 20 to 24 inches. I'm going to cut 3 lengths. And now I'm going to tie off the center with this 1/16 inch wide satin ribbon. So I'll fold this in half and then tie off the center. I like to make this nice and long. You can always cut it shorter. And then thread these through the bead from the bottom to the top and pull it down over the tulle. The tulle is like the little slip underneath the dress. Just like to make sure that that feels tight in there, like it's really filling that hole, and it is. So I backed it off. I'm going to apply a little bit of glue here and then send the head back down onto the tulle. And there we go. Okay, now I'm going to tie a knot in the top. I don't know why, it's just habit. Right there. And then an overhand knot here at the end of the hanging loop. That's the hanging loop. That looks good. And now I'll gather up the top edge of the dress by hand. I have a doubled strand of this hand quilting thread, and I like to use a thimble. I'll start at the back. I'm going to secure the end in this folded over seam allowance in the back of the dress, just like that. And then I'll just do a running stitch all the way around. Now when I get to a seam like this one, I try to go over the seam like this so that when I pull it tight, it's going to kind of disappear into the fold there. And I won't have the seam on the outside. Same thing here and here. There we go. I'm going to pull it tight, then sort of undo it, and then I'm going to place this inside the dress, put that face up right underneath the seam there, pull it tight. This end should be at the back center. I mean, by the end, I mean like where the thread comes out, where this thread comes out, because I started at the back center and finished at the back center. And then I'll wrap tightly. This doesn't have to be super neat because I'm going to add a little lace collar over it. But I'm still trying to keep it up close to her chin. And then I'm going to go through side to side just to secure it through that tulle so that the dress doesn't slip down. And now I'm going to tie off my thread in the back. Now I'll just trim off this edge of the red, the tulle. I like a little bit of it showing below the lace, just a little hint. And then I have about 20 or 24 inches of this flat white lace, and you can use anything you like, but I'm going to gather this up to form a little collar. So I'll fold under the end and then secure my thread there like that. And then I'm just going to gather it up with little bitty stitches, just a running stitch close to that top header, but not through the header, just below, like that. And I'm just going to go from one end to the other. Okay, there we go. Now the lace is gathered up, and I'll place it around her neck and just join the ends in the back. I like to distribute the fullness evenly. That looks good. And then once I have it arranged kind of so I have the same amount of ruffleage on either side, I'm going to stitch through just to sort of make sure that the ruffles, the gathers don't slip. Just one stitch, and then I'll secure it in the back. I like to use baker's twine at this step, but I feel like the red and white from the twine would just blend in and it wouldn't even stand out against this striped fabric. So I'm going to try 1/8 inch ribbon. This is just red satin ribbon, double face. There we go. Now I'll cut it nice and long. tie a little bow. I want the loops to go maybe 2/3 of the way down this part right here. But this type of ribbon doesn't always want to stay tied, so I might add a little drop of glue. About like that. I don't want these ends, the streamers, to interfere with this image, so I'm not going to let them get too long. And I'm going to add a little bit of glue right here and kind of press those loops down. I could also add a little holly sticker or something right there. Maybe I will. I think I will add this little holly, mostly because I want to sort of secure the angle of these ribbon loops. So as time goes by, I want to make sure they maintain that nice angle and they don't go sticking out like that. Okay, and then I need to trim the streamers. Let's see, about like that. Now we'll talk about the hair. So I can use a 6-inch card for the hair and it'll be really long and crazy. Or I can do a 5-inch card and it'll be more, you know, normal. But of course, I'm gonna go for the taller hair. So she's gonna have like a huge sort of explosion of hair. And I was thinking about, why don't I do brown hair, red hair, blonde hair, yellow hair more often? And I think it's because I don't like to change my thread. So since I have white thread in here, I'm just gonna go with the white hair. I'm going to use 2 yarns. This sort of fuzzy mohair and this loopy mohair. And I'm going to treat them as one strand and wrap around this card about 20 times. That's 20 total, so it'll be actually 40 strands. My yarn has been rolling underneath my sewing table and picking up all kinds of little bits of lint and stuff, so I'll clean that out first, and then I'm going to stitch across. Across this way, forward and back. Here's how the card looks now, stitched back and forth, and then I'm going to fold it a few times just to sort of make it easier to tear away. And just going to reach inside in between those loops and tear the card out. The card is perforated along the center where I stitched it, so it's not really that hard. And I like to see a clean edge where there's no little pieces that got stuck in the stitches. I used 2 4x6 cards. And here's my little wig. Now, I'm going to spread some hot glue across the top of her head, as if, just like if she was wearing a hairband, like from ear to ear across the top of her head. And then I'll take the center of the wig and lay it along that glue. Okay, that looks good. Now let's just fold it back and check. Make sure I can see all her features. It would have been nice if the ends weren't right there in the middle, right over her eyes, but sometimes that's the way it goes. And then I make sure my hanging loop is out of the way. And then I'm going to spread out some more hot glue along the back of the bottom of her head right there, like right at the nape of her neck. And then I'm still pressing the wig in along that seam. So the seam is the part that gets glued. Okay. That looks good. See, this is kind of long and unruly, but if you want a more sedate style, you can just use a 3x5 card instead of a 4x6. Just trimming out those ends. There's no better way to do it. It's just the way it goes. All right, now I'm going to use another doubled strand of quilting thread. Can you see that? And I'm going to tie off her hairstyle. Okay, so I'm drawing up the hair, and then I'll leave a little extra here because I'm going to tie this off. But this is a doubled strand, and then I'm just going to wrap it. She looks like kind of like a little Gibson girl. Maybe 2 or 3 times, and then with the first end here, this is doubled, I'm going to tie this off. 1, see, I'm pulling it nice and tight. 2 or 3 times. I don't know why I do it with a needle. You don't really need the needle, but it does help a little bit if you're trying to, you know, go through the loop. And now let's add the halo. This is 20 gauge gold wire, cut off about 8 inches. I need to make the stem on this halo kind of long to get all the way through that hair. So I'm going to give it at least 1 inch, I would say. And then the loop is less than 2 inches, maybe 1.5 inches. So I'm folding this up like this. So it looks like one of those Easter egg dyeing things. I'm going to spread some glue here on the ends of the wire, squeeze out a glob right there, and then press it into the center of her hairstyle right in front of the ribbon, just so I know it's going into the center. And I'm going to hold it for a minute just to make sure it gets nice and secure. And then I like the halo to be kind of in the hair rather than above the hair. Off to the side is really cute. Whatever you like. And make sure you don't get the hanging loop caught in that. This is another reason to make a nice long hanging loop, because you see how much height there is to the hair. You want to make sure this is very obvious. You know, it's just human nature when somebody's decorating their tree to pick her up by the halo and hang her by her halo, or even to pick her up by the hair and hang her up by a loop in the hair. So make sure this is very long and obvious. Before we go on, I'm going to add a little ribbon bow right here where I tied that off, just to make sure that's nice and secure, and also to add a little bit of whimsy. These are my favorite La Petites from Hobby Lobby. So I'll add a little bit of glue to the back of the bow and press that just off center there, which gives it a little bit of a decoration and also helps hold the thread that's tied off the hair. Okay, we're looking good. It's time to move on to the wings. For the wings, I have a 4 3/4 inch circle of woven fusible interfacing. And I'm going to use this white and blue polka dot print from the collection. So I use this same print for the Baby's First Christmas collection. It's just really one of my favorites. I don't know why. There's not that much to it, but it just has a certain liveliness in the spacing and the sizes of the dots and the color, and the fact that it's white just makes me think of wings. So I'm going to press this to the wrong side of the fabric. I'm trying to line up the grain of the fabric. I don't know why. Seems like it might be important, so I'll do that. And then I'm going to cut it out and I'll be right back. Here is my circle, and I'm going to fold it in half, trying to keep that grain straight. And then pin it and stitch around the curve with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to trim the corners, and then starting in the center, I'll go about maybe 1/2 inch down and draw a little plus sign, and then fold here and making sure I'm not catching this other side. Just cut this little cross, this little plus sign, so that I have something to turn through. And the side with the plus sign is the front. I I forgot to trim the seam allowance. So I'm going to use my pinking shears and just trim that seam allowance so that so that the edge is more smooth. Okay, that's better. Now this should turn very easily. I'm using a chopstick to sort of help me. There, that looks better. Okay. Sorry, I knew something was wrong when I was turning it before, and yeah, this is how it's supposed to look. Now I'm going to press it, and always bear in mind that the side that has this little cut is the front. This doesn't, it's not as obvious, but if you have a directional fabric, you want to be sure that the figures in your fabric are, the top is here at the fold. So the right side up from this side. It's easy to assume this would be the back, but this is the front. So I'm going to press this. Here we go, here's how it looks. And now I'm going to go and run a decorative stitch along this curved edge, not across the top, but I'm going to do a little red scallop all the way around this curved edge, and I'll be right back. You know what? I forgot to run the camera wasn't on when I just glued this to the back of her head. So I did the scalloped stitch, and this was right just as the machine has programmed. I didn't make any adjustments to it. And this is number 30 on my Bernina. But if you don't have the scalloped stitch, you can use a zigzag or any kind of stitch. Even a straight stitch will be really cute. And we're done. Thank you for watching my tutorial. If you're enjoying my videos, please like, share, and subscribe.